So in this section, we're going to be discussing what happened in World War II. And the war is so large and so encompassing of various regions that we're just going to look at the highlights of this war because there's really too much for us to cover in one class session or such. If you're very interested in World War II, Dr. Blowbaum at WVU teaches a course in World War II, and there's plans that I might be teaching an online version of this course maybe next fall for those who are World War II buffs. So I'm basically going to go through the major highlights of this war and lead us to the events that propel Europe towards certain directions following the war as well. So as we discussed last time, Hitler has taken control over Germany. He's declared a Third Reich, basically a third reign of power or something to this extent. And he goes back through German history and reassesses German history to say when there was the First Reich and the Second Reich and etc. And he makes it very clear from the beginning of certain elements of his agenda, and some of these go back to Mein Kampf. One of the items on the agenda is to remove Jews from Germany, and he also discusses removing them from Europe in general. He uses very harsh terms, even in open forums and in public places. And, he'll say, for example, that he wants to annihilate the Jews. And when we look at World War II, we can't push this aside from what happens in the war because it is a war aim of Hitler. It's not a side issue, and at times it takes precedence even over the war for his leadership to eliminate the Jews. Now, as for the final solution of what we think of as the Holocaust and the death camps, this is a process that evolves over time based on attempts that they have in Germany to sterilize and euthanize different people. And as the war progresses in his favor, he's going to look for ways to expand this policy. In the early years of his time in Germany, there was discussion of pushing Jews out, and this is going to be done through forced emigration at different times. He's going to allow for foreign powers to intervene somewhat to alleviate him of this problem. And he calls this the Jewish problem, the Jewish question about how to remove Jews from Germany, etc. And Germany was this very large country of tens of millions of people, and the Jewish population was really negligent. It's not a large population in Germany. Was there a large Jewish population in Poland, for example? Yes, there were 3.1 million Jews in Poland, but Germany, even in 1938, a year before the war begins, there's only 150,000 Jews left in Germany. It's a small number. So much of what his venom is against is what we call a chimera. It's an illusion, a ghost that doesn't exist, causing all the problems. And many people supported Hitler because of his policies to revoke the Treaty of Versailles. And this is how he gains acceptance. And many people who might not have been anti-Semitic vote for the Nazi Party in spite of his anti-Semitism because they felt that he was the only one addressing the restrictions of the treaty. But there was, of course, anti-Semitism in Germany, and he played upon these fears very well, and that's what he was a master at. In the 1930s, a series of laws are going to be passed against Jews, slowly stripping them of all of their civil rights in the country. Most Jews had gained full emancipation by 1900 throughout Europe, meaning that they had the right to Jewish men had the right to vote, and they were considered full citizens, etc. And what happens in Germany in the 1930s is that he's going to slowly strip away those rights to the point where they are without citizenship in Germany. There's going to be a removal of Jews from positions of authority. So in governmental jobs, there's going to be rules that are going to take away their positions in the professional world as lawyers and doctors and such. And eventually they're not going to be allowed to own any businesses, and they're going to be restricted from where they can shop and where they can and their movements, and even the riding of bicycles will be disallowed under the Nazi regime. So the Nuremberg laws is what this general kind of umbrella category we call of laws that are going to pass. He takes power in 1933, and from 1933 to 1939 there's going to be a series of laws passed at different times. Part of this anti-Jewish policy is attack on others within his nation based on his race theories and the breeding of a more powerful people. And so some of the first practices of gassing people will occur against the mentally ill in Germany. So they set up euthanasia programs where mentally ill people were taken from various hospitals or mental institutions and brought to these special centers where they would be taken off of a bus and basically assessed as if they're going to have a typical kind of doctor's health inspection, and then they were put into a room and gassed, or they were injected with various medicines that killed them. There's different attempts at different types of things. The injections become common at first. It's something that's going to be rejected later on because it doesn't kill people quick enough. But more than 100,000 mental patients will be killed in Germany before the war even begins. And eventually the Catholic Church will take a stand against this. And Hitler's policy, it goes underground. And this is what happens oftentimes when foreign attention or attention from the Catholic Church is brought upon the Nazi regime. They have a tendency to shroud themselves at that point and stop whatever was happening and submerge it in some way that can be maybe reemerged later. There's also a policy of forced sterilization under Hitler's Third Reich in Germany, where those who had a history of mental illness, who might not be institutionalized, women will be forced to be sterilized, especially women. And again, a few 100,000 women were forcibly sterilized during this time period. So much of what happens in Germany in this time period is going to be a precursor for this greater tragedy that happens much later. But what we're seeing is a diminishing of all what we consider essential human rights: the rights to property, the rights to health and life, and these are going to be stripped away and diminished over time in Germany, so that many people are going to fear radical changes because they see how it happened in their own nation. Once the war begins, this is then going to be spread out, especially in the East, and I'll talk about that next.